I've been making YouTube videos about playing the saxophone since 2016, and over the last 5 or 6 years, I've covered a lot of topics, but there is one crucial element to playing the saxophone that I have not yet made a video about, and that is articulation. That all changes today, and in this video, I'm gonna go over the basics of tonguing that everyone needs to know. Even if you've already been playing for a while, you should still watch this video, as I may cover some things you didn't already know or provide you with a helpful alternative perspective. If you teach the saxophone, you may want to share this video with your students, so let's get into it. We have two main ways to start a note on the saxophone: an air attack and a tongue attack. You can start a note just by blowing air into the saxophone, right? At some point, the air velocity is enough to get the reed vibrating, and the tone will start. A tongue attack is where you use the tongue to control the precise moment at which that reed starts to vibrate and produces the tone. There are pros and cons to both of these methods, as well as appropriate times to use them and less appropriate times. When and where you use the various attacks is a matter of style and a topic for another video. I just want to cover the mechanics of each with you today. Obviously, an air attack could cause you to be less rhythmically accurate with the beginnings of your notes. It's also highly impractical when it comes to repeated notes, as you'd have to start and stop the air over and over again, which is not desirable and could lead to you hyperventilating a little. The tongue attack can help you be more rhythmically accurate and repeat notes, but tongues get tired pretty quickly and they can only move so fast. There's another part to this that often gets overlooked, and that's the other side of the note: how it ends. You can also stop a note in two ways. One, cut off the air, and two, use the tongue to stop the reed from vibrating. Whichever type of attack you use, your goal should be to start each note with the ideal sound and intonation, although that's where things start to get a bit tricky. It is very common for players to make adjustments at the beginning of a note. Sometimes maybe your embouchure is a bit too tight, or a note came out louder than we wanted it to, and we have to adjust right away. This is where long tones can be your best friend, as they allow us an opportunity to practice getting a consistent tone throughout the note. I generally practice my long tones with an air attack, as this allows me to get used to producing a tone without any movement in my mouth. The act of tonguing notes can actually cause changes in our embouchure that we don't want. So while I don't use a lot of air attacks while I'm performing, I practice with them as a way of eliminating a potentially problematic variable. Now let's cover the mechanics of starting notes with the tongue. The most important thing to realize is that the tongue is not producing the sound. It's still the air column making the reed vibrate that produces the tone. The tongue is just acting like an on-off switch. If your saxophone were a house, your airstream is the electricity and the tongue is a light switch. You need to have the electricity on first, the airstream, before you can get the lights to come on when you flip the switch. So before you blow a note, there needs to be air pressure built up behind it. Try blowing some air and then sealing off your mouth with your tongue while maintaining the air pressure. I'm still pushing that air, but it can't get out. As soon as I release my tongue from the top of my mouth, the air column starts again at the same velocity. You can do this exact same thing with the saxophone mouthpiece. With your tongue resting gently on the reed, start the air pressure up behind it. The moment you release your tongue, the tone should start. You can use your tongue to stop a note in the same way. While you're holding a note, touch your tongue to the reed to stop the vibrations, and the note should stop abruptly. You could also just cut off the airstream to stop a note. Notice the difference in sound between those two options. When and where you use these different releases, again, it's a matter of style and a topic for another video. If you're playing a series of notes, you're going to have to decide whether you want to tongue or slur them. Those are pretty awkward words to have to keep saying, by the way. The word slur refers to connecting notes with the air and not tonguing them. Typically, in any given musical phrase, you would tongue the first note to get a nice clean, clear attack, and then use a mixture of articulations depending on your stylistic and musical choices. Let's take a musical phrase that everyone is familiar with to show you what I mean. Here, I tongued the first note and slurred or connected the rest. This time I tongued every note. Which one was a better match for the phrase musically? Often the articulations are implied in written sheet music. That rounded line over the top of the phrase indicates that we want to connect all of those notes. There are tons of nuances you can add when it comes to articulation. Of course, that's all beyond the scope of this video though. If you're playing a series of notes in a musical phrase, it's very important that you keep your airstream steady. You do not want to be starting and stopping your air for each note. That's one of the pitfalls with tonguing. We want to keep the airstream constant regardless of what we're doing with our tongue. Remember, the air is like the electrical current that's always present, so that when we flip the switch, the lights come right on. Try practicing anything you already know how to play with these two basic articulation patterns. All tongued and all slurred. Then you could try practicing this with a mixture of the two. Here are the 8 basic ways to apply this to a 4-note grouping. You're going to come across all of these in written music, and it does take some practice to get your tongue ready for this. This is one of those things that in the saxophone world is inexplicably controversial. Some people say use the tip of your tongue, other people say use the back of your tongue, other people say lodge your tongue against the back of your teeth and use the middle against the reed. Here's the correct answer. Each one of us is different physically. Some people have shorter or longer tongues. Some people have larger or smaller mouths. Your personal physiology, as well as the amount of mouthpiece inside your mouth, is going to determine the ideal tongue placement for you. Experiment and try to find the sweet spot where you can articulate notes cleanly without disrupting your embouchure and while staying relaxed. I've added this video to my free beginner/refresher course, so if you haven't already watched the other videos in that series, check them out here. If you found this helpful, please let me know in the comments and let YouTube know by dropping a thumbs up and subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.